What's up, everyone? It's Friday night. That means the daily fix on Fantasy and Frames. We are going to cover the Week 3 DFS main slate, multi-entry contest. Hit our intro. What is going on, everyone? This is the Daily Fix. I'm Keith Fleming, joined by my brother from another mother, Joseph, the Brain Matz. Unfortunately, Kevin Tompkins is not here tonight. It took all of 2 weeks for me and Joe's massive egos to run him off of the show. No, I'm just kidding. Unfortunately, Kevin is a little under the weather. We hope he feels better.
Absolutely.
Immediately, because Kev is one of the best guys, not just in his knowledge and all the good things like, telling people to play the Saints the last 2 weeks. He's just a good person in general. So we'll miss him this week. But me and Joe are here. The great Nate Markham may join us. We'll see. It may be one of those deals where he ghosts me, Joe, where, you ask somebody to do something and they say, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. But in reality, they're just like,
it's a Friday night. There's a lot going on, I'm sure.
That's right. I'm sure Nate's got big plans, but have no fear. Me and Joe are here. Wow, look at me rhyming. Getting you ready for DraftKings Week 3. We're going to do the main slate, MME, and I want to start with a little bit of a discussion about the QB play.
Okay.
Everything is down, right? The passing yards, passing touchdowns. I mean, if we're being honest, QB and tight end has been a huge disappointment and bummer, particularly if you're spending money in your DFS lineups for those guys. But the QBs especially, you look at the top 8 scorers right now, 6 of the 8 are the guys you'd expect. Jaden Daniels, Richardson, out like Hurts, all these guys, Lamar, that run. Who would have had on their bingo card? Baker Mayfield, number 1 in fantasy through 2 weeks, and number 2 being Derek Carr.
I mean, not me. I mean, I've been relatively high on Baker. I think I've talked about it in the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
And I was surprised when so much of the value came on the ground this last week, as I think even Baker was. The Carr stuff, I wish I could say I saw it coming, because I did think the Clint Kubiak hire was a good switch up from that. I think at this point, can we just start talking about how the Sean Payton offense is just outdated and doesn't really work anymore?
Or do we want to talk about maybe the Saints being the latest, 2000 Rams, this offense that comes out, 2016 Falcons with Kyle Shanahan, right? Where everybody's like, wait a minute, Matt Ryan's going to throw 40. This team can't score 40 points a game all year. They basically did. Is that what the Saints are we going to be saying that in 5-6 weeks of, damn, why didn't I draft a bunch of Saints? Or damn, why didn't I play Saints in DFS before they all got jacked up in price?
I don't know if we're going to be saying it in 5 weeks. I do think there's a reasonable chance we're still going to be saying it after this week. Eagles defense last in forcing 3 and outs so far this season. So that's not helpful. 4th most points per drive. So this does not seem like the defense that is going to at least fully slow them down. Obviously, they could score 27 and it would be a slowdown, and you'll still have 3 guys go off in fantasy. So,
right.
Yeah, I think this will be another productive week for the Saints offense.
So do you think, though, that for DFS in general, until we see more, and with this resurgence in running backs, because it's almost like it's like 2008 all over again, where when you start your DK lineup, might as well just throw 2 backs in, then also a running back in your flex, and then build everywhere else. That's how I used to build rosters, right? That was the old school fantasy football way to success. It kind of feels like right now in DFS, until things change, would really rushing having, all of the upside. And I mean, these QBs are all basically a dime a dozen right now. Tight ends the same way. Wide receivers, you can always find values. Do you think it's okay to kind of pivot to that until we see something different, like especially maybe in some MMEs to try to remain different?
That's an interesting one. I mean, when you're looking at the QB position, I really think it is just if you're spending money, it's got to be a guy who's running right now. Oh, I mean, maybe there's some matchup where you go, oh, it doesn't matter. But otherwise, you got to stay in that mid-low
I don't know,
tier.
7K or above, I wouldn't pay it. I don't care what.
If you're right, like I still think like Baker is like a reasonable play. Carr is still under 6,000. Geno Smith has not gone up, even though he just had a super productive game on the road against on the road. Early start time for the West Coast team going to the East Coast. He looked great. He's still cheap. So like, there's guys who you can still get. But yeah, am I going to climb up to like who's there? I mean, I like the Stroud matchup against Minnesota. I think there's a good chance that goes well. But also, it's 7,100. Brian Flores is pretty freaking smart. Yeah, it's like as much as there's like some Texans receivers that I'm like, oh, I'm going to throw one of them in my lineup. Yeah, I don't think I want to pay that much for Stroud. And then everyone else out there is already a rushing QB. I mean, Dak Prescott against Baltimore, there's no chance I'm paying 6,600 for him when, Kyler's right there at 69. And then Hurts in what we think is going to be a shootout if you want to really spend up. So, yeah, I'm sticking with the running guys, or I'm dropping 700-800 or more down at the quarterback position.
Yeah, we'll get into further down in a minute. You didn't mention Anthony Richardson there. You don't like him back at home. I know the Bears have been a frisky
defense against the Bears.
Okay, yeah, let me make a little case for him real quick.
Okay, all right, you give me your case.
Home games, he's played 3 of them. No, not a huge sample size. He's averaging like 27 points per game. And this Bears defense has been very stingy, but they have allowed 2 QBs, not exactly known for their rushing prowess, to rush for 9 carries for 80 yards. And that's Will Levis and Caleb Williams. I look at if Will Levis and Caleb Williams can have that kind of production on the ground, potentially AK can as well. And I really like Josh Downs being back in this offense because what they're missing right now is sustained drives, being able to not, either complete a 50-yard pass or 3 and out. And Josh Downs, one of the best slot receivers, even as a rookie last season, I believe he was 7th in receiving yards from the slot last year. But the main thing is he's excellent after the catch. He's one of those guys that hopefully Richardson can just get rid of the ball a little quicker, maybe not throw every pass 20 yards down the field and see this Colts offense start to go. I just mean that if we're talking about those other guys, I feel like with his rushing upside and MME, he should be considered as well. But let's just get right into the QB. So is Kyler basically the most expensive guy that you're messing with this week? Because I know Dave Eddy really likes Jalen Hurts this week. He thinks that game is going to be a shootout. Without A.J. Brown, he's going to obviously run more. And the Saints have a really good run defense. So it may be difficult for Barkley to get it going. And again, that could just lead to more Hurts, both throwing and scrambling.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a reasonable argument to be made that he's going to be worth it because, if the Saints offense is not going to get slowed down, then it's going to be a lot on Jalen Hurts. And that's a good call that we could see a heavier dose of Jalen Hurts running in this game. But, I mean, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts when he has A.J. Brown.
Right, yeah. He's a pretty good receiver. I agree there.
So, yeah, I see the argument. And I think if you are in a larger field, that could make more sense to me because I'm assuming everyone and their mother is going to be on Kyler Murray this week. Because, that's the other shootout. The Lions defense has been less impressive than the Saints defense, and that goes back, that's not just the last 2 weeks. That's all of last season before. The Saints have really become, the last couple of years up until the 40-point explosions we've had, they were a team that was usually getting by more on the defense.
Oh, for sure.
So I think a lot more people are going to be on Kyler. I do think Kyler, again, if you're in a smaller thing, I think Kyler's a better play. He's cheaper. I like that.
I think he's obviously a little risky, though, because, I mean, the Lions can get pressure, and they're good against the run. And I think one reason Kyler has been so good this year
is the strength of the run game.
Yes, and if you look like he's done very well in play action, it's
Yeah.
obviously defenders are creeping up more and more in the box. That's going to make it easier. And don't get me wrong, the guys rush for at least 50 yards in each game. That's huge. That's just 5 free points. You know, with what QBs are scoring, that's a gangbuster. I am though, again, because he's 6,900 is the issue, right? It's the cost of him. I am a little leery. Like, unless you're just going all in on that game. And even if you are, I think I'd rather have Goff. And I know that probably seems insane, but Goff is excellent versus the blitz. And Arizona is blitzing as much as any team in the NFL right now. I think Goff is right now second in passing yards this season against the blitz. I look back last year, they played the Vikings week 18. I think the Vikings blitzed like 27 times. He was 22 of 27 for 320 and 2 touchdowns. And I just think this offense, that they're going to get it going because he is, I believe, like 25th or 6th in fantasy points scored. He's second in expected fantasy points scored. So they've had some bad luck. They had a couple of drops in the end zone, those kind of things. I kind of like going with Goff, and then that way you can take Harrison on the other side and maybe take, Williams and one of the backs who are both reasonably priced. But I know you want to talk about Baker. That's your boy. You've been on him all year. The guy that's now scored 19 points or more in 8 of his last 10 games, dating back to last year. Like, he's cooking, right?
He is absolutely cooking. And real quick, just on your Goff argument.
Yeah.
I mean, Arizona, obviously the defense looked a lot better last week, much to my chagrin as someone who was like, I think the Rams will overcome the line issues. And then they didn't. And then their best player got hurt. And it all went to shit.
Yeah.
But 31st, the Cardinals in PFF coverage grade so far. So
they're improving though, Joe. They were 32nd preseason. So,
That's right. 32nd. I mean, well, when you have Washington out there as well, you can get to 31st. But Baker is obviously he was my guy back when that draft was happening because again, analytics nerds, we were all about Baker Mayfield. It's like, this guy's going to be good. And then for a couple of years, it looked like we were right, and then it looked like we were super wrong. And I mean, he won me back over last year for sure. I think there was some concern. Dave Canales left to go coach the Panthers. What's going to happen with the new OC? Looks like there's 0 issues so far. It's the same team it was last year where they're just not going to be successful running the ball. But you've got a killer group of receivers. You've got, an O-line that obviously isn't clearing the best run lanes, but it's like, you got Tristan Wirfs to protect you. You can have some time back there. And, he has taken off. And, when I look at this matchup, Denver 16th against the pass or against quarterbacks so far in DK. So, obviously, that's,
helps
it's an okay number. But, it's, you're not facing the most difficult stretch so far. And then, again, the key for me, anytime you've got someone facing Denver, do they trust the options off of their number one? Because Patrick Surtain is as good as it gets. But then going back to that PFF grade, 27th in coverage overall as a team. So if you have other guys to throw to,
another Godwin
you're in a good spot. And so Godwin would be a guy I would be putting into a lot of lineups this week.
It's really good.
But I mean that's again, Denver. It's one guy is awesome. I don't really expect. I'm sure they'll try because they're going to be winning this game because Denver's offense is a dumpster fire. And their run defense hasn't been great either. So maybe they'll find some success running. But obviously that hasn't really been what's happened over the last year plus with this Tampa Bay team. We saw week 1, they were up. Again, my big concern week 1, I told you he was going to roast that Washington defense.
Yep.
The only question was, do they end up shutting it down because Washington is 7 points? They kept going. Washington got some garbage points at the end, but that game was never close. And Tampa Bay scores 30 plus. Baker has a big week. I think we see a similar script here where Godwin, and maybe we'll get some McMillan. Maybe, again, he only the one catch that week 1, but had the touchdown. Maybe we're going to see another version of that, but I would be firing up those Baker Godwin combos.
I like that. Baker's another guy too, has been excellent versus the blitz this year. He's second right now in passing yards.
Vance likes to come at you, so.
And that's exactly it. I mean, literally 22 of his 23 pass attempts against the blitz this year have been considered on target throws. So
take that.
That is very good. But I just think at the end of the day, 5,800 for Carr, and right now projected ownership of 7%.
That's it?
Yes. Do you know how much it pains me as a Falcons fan? Like, I mean, look at this. I got a crap right now that I'm having to come around that for me to have success in DFS this year, I'm going to have to play Saints and just Carr at 5,800. Because what I like about Carr is you can make it a little less risky if you want to by stacking him with Kamara and not stacking him with any of his receivers. But the thing is, both Olave and Rashid are also like extremely cheap. Olave is uber owned this week. I think I looked at he's either the first or second in projected ownership right this second.
That makes a lot of sense.
Rashid's not that bad, but I mean, Carr being 7%, load him up in MME lineups. I think, though, that's the way I'm going. You can run Devontae Smith, who we'll talk in more detail about when we get to the wide receivers back against it. But I think Carr is probably the best play, like, for his price this week. Honestly, if you're looking MME or cash, because, again, he's second in fantasy points. I think he's only thrown the ball like 38 times or 39 times this year. So it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating that, the Saints are just so interesting to me because, it's like, why is Carr so low still? He only threw 39 pass attempts the first 2 weeks. So obviously, like, there's a certain amount of, the efficiency can't keep up. But also, if you're only throwing 20 passes a week and you're scoring 21 points per game, all right, as long as, if this is a shootout, we're upping those pass attempts 10 or 12. And we can still get that 20-point game pretty easily. So, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Nathaniel gets it. He said he's playing Carr in all of his heads-up rosters this weekend. So he knows what I'm saying.
It's entirely fair.
Do you want to cover any other guys? There's one guy I want to talk about so people can laugh and scoff and everything. But I'm going to be me.
I mean, another one that I like. Again, I think this ranking is going to throw people off, and I think it's a mistake. Is Geno Smith against Seattle, or not against Seattle, against Miami?
Be impressive if he was playing Seattle.
Yes, that would be interesting. That'd actually be a great matchup because the
Seattle like the defense, Bugs Bunny now playing first base. Bugs Bunny.
I think the Seattle defense would be a much bigger challenge than this Dolphins defense.
That is a very fair point.
Yeah, so Miami 4th on DK against quarterbacks so far, but again, going to my old trusty PFF coverage grade, 30th. So only ahead of the Cardinals and the Commanders. And again, Seattle has had some success running. That I think that, there's a legitimate risk, more so than Baker, that this turns into like the Charbonnet, because I think Walker is unlikely to play again.
Or maybe the Kenny McIntosh breakout game.
So I think there's definitely the all right, maybe this is more of a running back game, but again, we just saw him play New England. He throws for 300 plus yards. One of the few guys who's hit 300 this season so far. I'm loving this offense. It's all about 3 wide, but I think there's more going on than there was in this Shane Waldron offense, which is currently not doing so well in Chicago. Although I do think there's some hope there against a bad Tennessee defense. So if you want to throw the dice at Caleb, I don't think that's a bad play this week. But I think Ryan Grubb's doing some interesting things. I think JSN, big winner in getting Ryan Grubb to be the OC. Again, a guy who had 3,000-yard receivers on the Washington team he coordinated last year. If Tyler Lockett was like a year younger, I would be betting on 3,000-yard receivers this year for Seattle. Wow. As is, I think it's going to be JSN joining DK. So I like that combo as a cheap combo you can do.
It's a really cheap one. I think that's like just over 10, right? I think 55.
Yeah, and that's one where if you did it last week, that was winning you some real money. So I think there's a reasonable chance we're headed. I'm not going to say the exact same numbers because, maybe Miami will surprise, but I think Skylar Thompson is not
Gonna have a
good.
bad
So
time.
we're going to need a magical A-chain game to make it, to keep it up, the pass attempts up, to make it another 300, JSN getting 100, like a score type of week. But for 5,600, I still think there's a lot of value with Geno. But if we're talking value, let's go to the guy you want to talk about right now.
Yeah. Real quickly, do want to say thank you to Charlene, Nathaniel, Jorge, talking about his Dynasty shares. Would love a Kenny McIntosh game. We appreciate all of y'all joining us right now. If you have questions or comments, please hit them up in the chat. But I hope we don't lose all of our viewers right now. But I really like playing Andy Dalton this week in MME, and I'm really close, Joe, to setting it in my most expensive, like $150 cash lineups, because he's so cheap. 4,800. His projected ownership is 1.8%. And like for cash, the case is a little easier because one of our golden rules in cash is you just want to get 3 times whatever a player's salary is. Typically 150 points in a DK cash, like single entry 50-50. You're going to make money. And at 4,800, he needs all 14.2 points to do it. So that is very, very doable. Especially,
Absolutely.
you made me feel so much better when you said that the Panthers online right now in pass block win rate is like top 10, right? So it really is more Bryce causing issues. They're doing a decent job giving protection. And to your point, he's just too short. What was the stat you gave me last night?
Yeah, so here's some fun stats to tell you a little bit about some of the quarterbacks this year. So I'm just going to read you through the top 6 in pass blocking grade currently in PFF. So you have the Colts, have been number 1 so far this season. So Anthony Richardson, it's on you to make accurate passes. Even without Jason Kelsey, the Eagles remain an elite offensive line. Sadly for myself and any other NFC East fans who are not Eagles fans. Green Bay, perennial. Just they always have a good O-line. Their OC is one of the few OCs who was previously the offensive line coach. The New Orleans Saints, lo and behold, that helps out when you're trying to run that offense. Carolina Panthers, number 5 in pass blocking grade this year.
Line with this.
Number 6, my New York Giants. 2 teams that had awful offensive lines that last year that have been sabotaging their quarterbacks. This year, those QBs are getting the chance to operate. And if they're not doing it, it's on them. I think if Daniel Jones had crapped the bet against Washington, I think there's a real chance he would have been benched. Bryce Young, just looks like he has PTSD right now. I actually don't think this is necessarily the end for him in Carolina. It seems like a lot of people are just assuming that because you never bench your quarterback in this situation. I think maybe he needs a break. He needs to get right. He needs to see that Dalton operate the offense and not get murdered. And maybe that allows him to reset mentally. Because, again, right now they have the lowest passing offense grade, which was entirely Bryce Young, and the 5th highest pass blocking rate. So, obviously the receivers are still not awesome, but.
Well, we'll find out. Charlene was asking who would you stack with. I am going to. We'll go into detail. Just if you're not going to be able to stick around, Deontay Johnson is to me the answer.
Yes.
Especially the Raiders have a good pass rush. Thielen is more a further down the field guy, but a little bit more on Dalton. Reminder: last year with this Carolina team, he made 1 start, threw it 58 times, and scored 23.8 points. And I went back because I'm a maniac and looked at all of his starts since 21, 14 starts. So he's still playing a good bit. He's played each of the last 3 seasons. He's averaging 14.58 points per game in those starts. Again, at that 4,800 price, that's all you need. With him being 1%. I will also say, Charlene, that if you don't want to stack him, I don't hate that either. Because what happens if it ends up being Leggett, John? Ones if there's not an alpha receiver out of that, I feel like he's so cheap, you don't necessarily have to stack him to get, the bang for your buck. Because again, QB scoring has been so bad this year overall that, if he scores 15 points at this price, he's kind of well worth it. And probably would be kind of, right in the middle of the pack for the week. Because, it has been really rough. If you look at the QBs points per game average. I mean, God, I'm trying to look. How many have 15 points or more? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this slate. Or excuse me, 2 would have made. No, I'm sorry. Forgot they got car price along. So that's 9, including Geno, 10 with Darnold. So there's 10 guys averaging 15 points or more in this slate. Not a lot. One other guy I just want to mention real quick again, Justin Fields, 5,400. I know everybody's really disappointed, but this has been, I think, more than anything with his rushing, the fact that they're not having to throw very much. And it's like, Keith, what are you talking about? Fields is one of those guys that usually makes 1 read, right, Joe? 2 at the most. And then if it's not there, he gone. And he hasn't had the opportunity to do that because the Steelers have been in control of both of the games they played so far, rushing, throwing very little. I don't know if for sure this is the week, but I promise you the first time that Fields has to throw it, drop back to throw it 25, 30 times, that's going to be the week that you see like 70, 80 yards and probably a touchdown because they're not doing a ton of design runs, which makes sense. Why get them hurt? I think they know this is the better QB, but I believe once he starts having to actually throw the ball more, you're going to see his rushing yards go up, and then he's going to become more of the fantasy cheat code that we're used to. And I actually still think the Chargers are going to be able to run the ball even on this great Pittsburgh defense. I know you're going to talk about Dobbins when we get the running backs in just a second. I don't hate Fields. He is also in the 1.9% projected ownership. So in MME, anytime you have a guy like that with, his ceiling is enormous. Obviously, if he, rushes for 100 yards, say, and a touchdown, it's never, a bad idea if you want to get super, super crazy. Any more thing on QBs? Or you want to move on to the RBs?
Let's keep it moving.
All righty. RBs, obviously McCaffrey can't play. He's top of the list. Kevin had mentioned that he wants to run a full Philly New Orleans stack, literally with 5 plays. He'd have both Kamara and Barkley. I am leery of Barkley this week. So you still because Barkley scares me a little bit. I guess you think he's considering he would be much more utilized in the passing game? Is that what the deal is, or?
No, obviously, despite a notable drop last week, I don't think you're phasing Barkley out. Week 1. They got him on that
last week, so
right, and they utilized him well week 1 where he got that touchdown little wheel route in the red zone. So I definitely think they're looking to utilize him there. Especially, you got AJ Brown out. You're trying to utilize everyone more. And if we think the Saints are keeping up or potentially even out to a lead against the Eagles, then I don't think it matters for Saquon. I think if you're in the lead, they're going to run him strong. If they're falling behind, I think he's still, what? With Brown out, is he the third option? We haven't seen much of Dotson.
I mean, it's so for my boy Britton Covey, or however you say his name, the target PPR monster with his, I think, 6 targets.
Does Saquon have more targets so far this year than Goddard? Because I don't feel like Goddard, like you said earlier, tight end's been kind of a wasteland.
He saw only 2 week 1, which was kind of surprising. But again, no surprise with Brown out, and I think that's probably his floor, seeing 5 targets. And again, if the Saints score more points, remember, my Falcons trailed a majority of the game last week, so they weren't in exactly just a throw set. But the first running back, because we're not even going to talk about Kamara. Right now, it's a defense that has had some issues with running backs, and the way they've schemed Kamara so well, both in the passing and rushing game, I won't even bat an eye if you want to play him. But Devin Achane's the most interesting guy to me. 7,000, huge projected ownership, Joe. 27% right now. And this was a play that I really expected people to be off of with Skylar Thompson, especially, but I guess maybe Mostert now being officially doubtful. Maybe, it doesn't matter. This is really more of a cash play, but I do just want to mention through 2 games, 32 attempts, 14 receptions. Just a ton of yards, 2 scores, almost a 20% target rate in the passing game. But to me, the big thing was just the uptick in volume last week with Mostert out. A lot of people were wondering, was this going to be the Jalen Wright or Jeff Wilson? Who's going to, kind of fill in? Yeah. He went from I think 12 or 14 touches week 1 to 29. And if this guy's seeing that kind of volume, I don't care if me and you are his quarterback, I like my chances with him. And he is, I mean, again, 14 targets, 14 receptions. Thompson targeted him 4 times in his 14 pass attempts and mop up duty last week, which you could tell the Dolphins were obviously trying to get Thompson some in-game reps, because I was like, why are they still playing their guys when this game has been over? But, you know, if you think of it from that point, maybe they were just trying to do that. And this is Seattle defense. They're allowing 4.5 receptions to running backs per game. And then, by the way, I've given up 244 yards on 51 carries and a touchdown on the ground. So, I even at a high ownership, I don't mind playing him in MME, not just cash, because I think that his floor is extremely high because of the way he is in the passing game, and he's just so explosive. He can bust any play and get away with it. Or would you completely fade him hearing his ownership is that high? And MME is what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, I would have a tough time just because I have so many doubts about the rest of this offense. Because I don't think Skylar Thompson is there'll be weeks where he'll be fine, where it's like Skylar will make enough plays. Obviously, McDaniels is super creative, especially in the run game, which that's where A-Shane, well, I guess like you said, he's getting a lot of receptions too, but that's where his bread and butter is. But man, I think the Seahawks defense is good. Oh, I forgot to silence my phone.
I thought it was a commercial.
Like Mike McDonald, coming over from the Ravens, it's a much tougher Seahawks defense to be able to read than it was in the Pete Carroll years. They've got 2 super talented corners. They got at least one good safety, because I know Julian Love, former Giant, is there, and he's a very solid safety. I don't think they're going to have any success.
Do we really know they're a better defense? They played Denver and New England thus far.
That's fair. I think tougher to read, like I said, because I think McDonald's much better at disguising things. Pete Carroll, I think, was slowly kind of evolving a little bit on that. But, his back in the day defense, Legion Boom, was just like, hey, you know what we're going to do? F you, we're better.
Here it comes.
So, you got Tariq Woolen, who's giant, Devon Witherspoon, who's, I think, by the end of the season, is going to be pretty roundly considered one of the elite corners in the NFL. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much success in the passing game. Probably the biggest A-Shane plus is what you said about receptions, because I think they're going to be losing the entire game. And if it's hard to pass downfield, which, again, that's kind of been what we've seen so far, right? Like you said, where running backs have done okay receiving the ball against the Seahawks defense thus far.
And he's got 20% target share. Not 20% like on certain downs, or 20%. Like he's not that far behind Tyreek Hill. He's right with Waddle. Right with him.
Yeah, like legit wide receiver 2 target share. So, high ownership and an offense that I don't think scores a lot of points. Like, he could absolutely have 8 receptions and he scores, 29 points without even getting a touchdown. Wow. That's in play, but high ownership offense I don't believe in this week. I might throw him in 1, but he's not going to be in most of my lineups.
All right, let's talk about your guy, J.K. Dobbins, because me and you both believe this is an example of, yes, this is a good Pittsburgh run defense. Don't get me wrong, but this is an unbelievable Chargers offensive line, who right now has the number 1 run block rating in the NFL of any offensive line. And I actually think it's Dobbins' lack of volume, because the Chargers have kind of controlled these games, that makes me so excited in a game that I think is going to be competitive. And the Chargers may have to up his usage a little bit more. I mean, I know they don't want to get carried away because obviously all the injury history and stuff, but I mean, Your boy is, what did you say the other night? He's basically doing his best Devin Achane impersonation, averaging like 10 yards per carry.
Yeah, he's at 9.9 yards per carry through the first 2
ridiculous.
Weeks. So, I mean, I think there's 2 ways to look at this. One, the negative way
Joe, only 4% projected ownership. Sorry, I wanted to add that as well.
Okay. I was going to ask, because I was going to say, if he is high owned as well, then that would probably be enough to steer me away, because I was about to say, there are real concerns. He has 27 carries through 2 weeks. That's okay. That's not, I want to pay $6,400 necessarily for a guy who's getting 13 carries a week. But even scarier, although there's again, when you're averaging 9.9 yards per carry, maybe you're cutting yourself out of this. He only has 2 red zone touches. Now, obviously, if you score a 50-yard touchdown,
as I say, you can't, Joe. You can't get a
red zone
carry
touch on that drive. But yeah, I think there's the concern that he's not going to be the primary red zone back. Obviously, it's early. We'll see if that can change. But yeah, 9.9 yards per carry is just hard to get away from. Breakaway run rate of 14.8%. It's the second highest in the NFL. Unsurprisingly, he's first in yards per touch among running backs. So does he continue to only get, 12, 13 carries a game? He's not getting red zone touches. He's not going to average 9.9 yards per carry, especially against a good defense like Pittsburgh.
Could be involved in the passing game though, right? Because
we haven't seen a lot so far, but I think there's
3 receptions week 1. He didn't do anything with them, but he had 3 receptions, 4 targets. I mean, that to me,
and that again, also a team that not throwing a lot of passes because they've been so effective in the run game and playing bad teams. So yeah, I think the question is he stuck at this opportunity share rate where he's getting half the carries, he hasn't seen red zone stuff, better defenses come. I don't think he's going to disappear because this team's super committed to the run. Again, we're talking about Harbaugh Roman. That's what they want to do. There's a reason they drafted a tackle in the first round, in the top, 5th overall, when they already had a true left tackle, franchise left tackle. So now they have maybe the best tackle combo in the NFL. They have one of the best run game designers. They're going to stay committed to it. And that to me that's why I remain bullish, is I know this team's going to run the ball. They're going to do it well. JK, you and I have always believed in this guy. And I think when he's been out there for most of his career, he's delivered on our belief. And the problem is he's gotten hurt so much. So yeah, I'm with you. I will take the risk and assume that in a tight game, give the ball to your best player on offense more. I mean, obviously, not counting Herbert there. But yeah, this is not a great receiving group. I know Quentin Johnston showed life. I don't know if I believe in it yet. The most effective thing they have right now is J.K. Dobbins. So if it's close, I think they lean on it. So I'm going to keep playing him until he's priced out or he doesn't deliver. I'm just going to keep riding it.
Nate, what's going on, Big Sexy? Let's start you with this. Since Charlene asked a question, welcome to the Daily Fix. How do we feel about Akers this week?
I just plugged my microphone and my headphones in, so all I heard was the word sexy and then Cam Akers. So
that's about right.
You're out of here.
Without, and this is with the assumption that there will be no Damian Pierce, there will be no Joe Mixon. I don't see Ogunbowale really doing too much to take many of the carries away. If this was a game where I thought Houston might be in trouble and trailing or negative game script, then sure, Dare could see some work, but Akers has looked great so far. I don't know if the volume is like RB2 like in your regular, but from here's a question though, how much play do you think he's going to actually have? I mean, I have to assume he's going to be kind of a pretty popular pick, right? Let's see where he's at.
Yeah. I was say, if you're going, because I was about to look that up myself because I don't know the answer. Colby, I know your answer for Jordan Mason. It is slightly under 39.8% is what I have for Jordan Mason right now for his projected ownership. Love Mason in cash. That is even too high for me for MME and what will be his last week as a quote unquote value. I want to move on to a guy that I really do like. He's right now at 9% projected ownership, and it's Tony Pollard, 6K versus the Packers. I was the idiot all summer saying Tajay Spears is the back you want in the Titans backfield. How has that worked out for me? Not too well, but this is why I love DFS. I've learned there's new data, and I am pivoting. He's seeing 75% of the Titans rush shares, but what's to me shocking, 19% target rate. So the one thing I did not expect from Pollard was him catching passes. Remember, this is a Packers defense. Saquon Barkley was running back 1 week 1. Last week, Jonathan Taylor was running back 9. They've combined for 269 yards and 3 scores. So you can run on this team. And I do not believe Jordan Love is going to start. I don't believe it. I think that would be insane. And if Malik Willis does start, I don't really have to worry about the Packers getting up and the Titans getting in just a throw situation. But even if they did, again, a 19% target rate, but I want him running the ball. And I think he gets 20 to 25 carries. I think he's going to have a very good day. And I love Tony Pollard at 6K, especially seeing 9% was actually lower than what I expected his ownership, because I thought more people would realize, hey, this guy's one of the better backs and he's got an A+ matchup.
Yeah, I remain very angry as a Tajay Spears owner in one of my season-long leagues that it has been the Tony Pollard show thus far. And I'm with you. I don't think that's going to change this week. So sadness for me.
Has Spears just pretty much maintained the questionable tag, or has I didn't look at his
right now? It says the Coach Callahan bullshit optimism throughout the week that he'd be available Sunday.
Classic.
But I guess he was a full participant today, so it looks like he will be played. But I mean, to me, from what we've seen, it doesn't really matter. Yes, he plays a few more of the passing downs, but I just don't think Tennessee's going to get down. So, or at least not enough to where they're going to be in a throwing situation. Right. Nate, we're getting kind of in that 6K and under range. Just tell me any of the backs that are lower priced that you like this week.
Yeah, I was looking at a number of that, and it's like I look at players like, I worry about Jerome Ford with cannibalization across the board. I don't like, I feel like I'm just naming all the players I don't like, but I'll tell you, I didn't think I was actually going to be okay. Here's 2 names. They're gross. I hate it. Can't believe I'm saying it. If anybody listens and knows anything about me, this, I've not been abducted, but the fact that, yes, I hate it. I hate it. It's
welcome to the team, Nate.
It's not a team. It is simply hey, you know what? They took out the, I don't even know the scenario that it's Carolina. They're going to be ahead. I can't see a situation that Carolina's defense just doesn't give Zamir White 75 plus yards, and the likelihood of a touchdown has to be greater than 40%. And that's enough.
The passing game looked in the second half last week. Like, to me, they look like they found something that's going to allow them to move the ball more consistently.
Yeah. And for 5,600, I'm good there, or 5,500, pardon me. The name right above him at 5,600, that again, another name I didn't think I would be even remotely enticed by, is DeAndre Swift. And you have a Colts team that now will be without DeForest Buckner, the middle of that line. Hopefully, huge loss for the Colts front four. But then ideally, there's enough pressure where we can maybe see some passing work, but he's looked so bad. But yet they continue to, they're going to give him the ball. They just don't seem confident to hand the reins.
The ball to Herbert, right?
Yeah, I know. But so Joe, that's like, I'll ask you, when you look at someone like DeAndre Swift, is there fear that maybe the coaching staff will do the right thing and give the ball to Herbert? Or do you just have to say, I trust that they don't know what they're doing with this and it's worth the investment?
I mean, I think week 3, I'm sticking with, they're going to stick with what they've thought so far. Because I think my assumption is they're thinking the way I am looking at this game, and that, like, all right, this is our chance. This is the Colts. They've been absolutely trash on defense. This is everything we've wanted to do on offense. We're going to be able to do it in this game. And I think if it doesn't work in this game, that's when I think you have some heavy reevaluation about what you're doing. So, I think if we get burned by Swift this week, we can start firing up Herbert hopefully in the weeks to come. But, I'm with you. Those are the 2 guys in this range that I was looking at, just because those matchups are so advantageous. I mean, Carolina, we're going back to Zamir. They were, I think, 27th, 28th last year on DK against running backs. And they were actually worse if you just looked at running, because they didn't give up a lot of receptions or yardage through the passing game to the running backs. They were bottom 5 in yards. They were dead last in touchdowns given up. They're second to last this year in rushing yards allowed. Again, if you're losing all the time, teams are going to run on you,
Mm-hmm.
and they have no one to stop him. Again, you're just talking about how the best defensive player on the Colts is out in the middle of the defense, and Derek Brown's out for the season for the Carolina Panthers. So, yeah, a very similar games where guys who have not been productive and very disappointing for people so far have a chance to have their breakout game. Obviously, whether that'll carry forward beyond this week, who knows? But we don't care in DFS.
Right.
Does it change your mind at all that, Herbert had actually fell, if you look at snap percentage, behind Homer? Homer's now on the IR. You would assume that he would at least get those shares, right, of, what he had lost to him. I'm just saying that if you want to take a shot on Herbert, I actually feel just as good about that as I would paying $600 more for Swift, knowing that really the Bears have two backs that I think, because they haven't really used Johnson at all so far. Justice Hill I want to talk about for a second. He just got paid. He's playing a Dallas team that has had issues with running backs in the passing game, obviously earlier this year, and just running backs in general. And I mean, he got paid. He's 1% projected ownership. They just signed him to a 2-year extension. He's played 53% of the Ravens snaps in the backfield. Now, again, he ran 14 routes week 1, only 7, in the second game, but that was a game that they were up, big. Obviously, ended up losing that game, but they controlled that game to where week 1 they were playing catch up. I do think this game kind of becomes a little bit of a shootout. And among running backs right now, he is 4th in yards per route run and 2nd in yards created per touch, 8th in fantasy points per opportunity. And again, the Cowboys, 10 receptions already allowed this season to running backs. I don't know. I mean, Dallas has not been great against the run either, like just actually rushing the ball. They've given up a ton of touchdowns. This could maybe be the Derrick Henry breakout game as well. But I just think the Ravens defense has looked like you can throw on it. You know what I mean? You look at Kansas City week 1, the Raiders, threw all over them in the second half last week. I think you were one telling me, Joe, right? They're 2nd in points allowed and number 1 wide receivers. That's really good for CeeDee Lamb. I think the Cowboys are going to score points, and the more points the Cowboys score, the more, of a chance that Justice Hill ends up being, potentially a real value at 4,900.
Yeah, the Ravens are favored by 1.5, and I mean that doesn't assist Justice Hill, but I also don't know if I necessarily trust that that means anything, because here's a scenario that I've just kind of wondering is, and maybe not this game per se, but what's stopping Baltimore from utilizing Justice Hill just enough to keep Derrick Henry fresh for the time that they pay, they brought him in for the postseason. And so is there enough volume for Justice Hill? I mean, I guess so. What'd you say he was? 4,400?
Yeah. Or 46, or no, excuse me, 49.
Oh, well, then never mind. That's crazy. No.
Well, I mean, because week 1, he had 7 receptions.
Right.
And I mean, if you look like last year, he really did down the stretch. He was very heavily involved, had a lot of big games. I thought the offense looked better week 1 when he was, again, heavily involved in the passing game than it did week 2. I know they were up and they were trying to close out games, but that's usually when Baltimore blows games. While they have 3 double-digit leads blown in the fourth quarter in just the last 2 seasons. Before we get out of running backs, Dante Foreman, your Giants cannot stop the run, Joe.
We cannot, no.
He's 4,400. What are the chances? I mean, they got to be pretty decent. He gets a rushing touchdown, considering for whatever reason, the Browns looked at Jerome Ford, who I thought had a good game week 1, and they're like, okay, you're not going to be involved in the running part of the game nearly as much as Dante Foreman. I think Ford's got a little bit more upside this week with Pierre Strong being out, because obviously that means he's going to, I think, get all the passing downs. But I just think the Browns are going to be able to run the ball, and that's going to be objective A. So that means Foreman's going to get opportunities. And again, Watson right now, about 20% of his passes are going to running backs.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a pretty unwatchable game unless you just like to see like 3 or 4 yards in a cloud of dust. Yeah, the Browns.
Just watch the ACC if that was the case. So
no, I think it makes sense. The problem is just guessing the usage. I think that's the whole issue with the Browns because, yeah, we just got – I forget what Brad Robinson finished with. It was like 130 rushing yards.
It was a lot, yeah.
And then you threw in whatever Daniel scrambled for. Yeah, obviously, if you're the Browns, you want to keep the game out of Deshaun Watson's hands as much as you can. You want defense and run game to be what you're doing. And yeah, the Giants should make that pretty easy for them to do. I don't think the offense is going to have the Giants' offense will have success against what's been one of the best defenses over the last year. And so they should be able to run the ball 30, 35. I mean, shit, maybe they'll run it 40 times in this game. So maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe both guys will see 14 carries and get a touchdown. But yeah, my only concern is, does Ford get the amount of carries you'd expect based on him being more productive so far? Or, maybe they're pounding the rock with the bigger back and Foreman. I don't know. If you can guess right, if you have a good read on that, if you're a Browns fan, if you know the beat writer to follow who's going to give you that tip, then, lock them in. I'm staying away from it just because I'm not sure what the split's going to be.
Don't forget, though, Joe, this is MME. It's not cash.
It can be worth the risk. That's true.
Exactly.
That is true.
That's all I'm saying is, again, these bad defenses.
No, if you need to save money and you want to throw in Foreman, who had 14 carries last week, facing a team that can't stop the run, go for it.
Nate, before we go on to wide receiver, since you weren't here, what's your favorite QB this week? Do you have one?
And I really do obviously want a piece of the Detroit-Arizona game, but I get the feeling everybody else in the world's going to want that same matchup, and the other ideal scenarios are all
bad. I think he's like 6 or 7%. Murray's very high on it.
Yeah, and golf probably wouldn't be just. I think people are reluctant after the first 2 games where it didn't work out in a dome, and then I just, for the life of me, I can't trust this Arizona pass rush, despite them actually being good last week, or at least getting to it. Dennis Gardeck had a great game, but I don't see against this offensive line really anything. And I mean, if you can build solid around Goff and which piece, of course, I want Jameson to pair with them, but I don't know if I love a ton of pieces outside of, I'm actually good with Geno. I think Geno's probably my favorite after Goff, as far as a matchup where I don't worry about Miami moving the ball offensively. I think the Seahawks will have plenty of opportunities on offense. They're not going to run the ball. Zach Charbonnet's just, he's garbage running the ball. We all know that. He can catch the ball.
Kenny McIntosh breakout game? Is there a chance he didn't get any touches? So probably not.
But there's also non-zero chance that they just throw the ball 26 times to JSN and
Jason.
DK again. Yeah. And I like that matchup against Kader Kohu, who, it's just solid. I like that. I didn't hear who you guys said. I am seeing
Carr at 7% ownership. That's the one 5,800 I keep coming back to, because I said at the beginning of the show, what happens if this is the 2000 Rams or like the 2016 Falcons? And this is the time that you can take advantage of it with their pricing and ownership and everything. And in a few weeks, they'll all be way too expensive, and it'll be harder to justify putting them in a bunch of lineups. I don't know. I just know that you've talked a lot about it. So has Joe. They went from the least pre-snap motion, least play action in the NFL to the most, this year, at least in percentages. And they look like an elite. To me, it reminds me a lot of Shanahan in 16 with the Falcons, because it's just like guys are wide open and it looks easy. And it's shocking because I know Matt Ryan is at least kind of a border Hall of Fame player, but it's not like you're loaded with talent everywhere. That Falcons team was, and everything looked really easy. And that's what it's looked like for me with the Saints the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. And it looked easy for Cousins in the second half and into overtime against the same Eagles team where he was picking them apart. And that's a far stretch. Is weird to say, Derek Carr to Kirk Cousins where we're at, but Carr just is, I still think he's the scariest person for anything in regular fantasy, because you just know that every one of us feels the same way. And we all know it's not true. I'm the curse. You're the curse. Joe's the curse. Whoever it is that starts them, as soon as you start them, someone's cursing it, and that's when and then you'll never play him again. So I'm intrigued. I did see Charlene. I was looking through the chat, and she had a question, as far as Andy Dalton. I was interested. Are you guys even considering Dalton?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's me. That's all me.
And that's fine, because I it's ironic that it was exactly the same. It was week 3 last year, right? And backing up Bryce Young, and he came in, and he absolutely peppered. He produced the wide receiver 3 on the week. Wide 3 or 2, whichever one.
That was one of his monster games. Joe said too. Did you know that they are 5th right now in pass block win rate? So their offensive line has actually been one of the best in win rate, and it's unfortunately just been Bryce. And I mean, I think that he can get it done. His price too is so cheap, 4,800.
Yeah,
that you're asking for 3-4 times. You're talking like 14 to 18 points.
Who did you guys say to stack with?
I like Deontay. Is
Yeah.
who I like, just because I
Same.
think that they have a good pass rush. And I don't know if he's going to have enough time to throw it, down the field to Thielen a bunch, but I do think he's going to be able to move the ball. Like, I think Leggett is an interesting play as well with him, because he's another guy you just get the ball too quickly. And Dalton, I looked it up. He's played 14 games since 2022. He's averaging almost 15 points per game in those. So, I mean, he's a serviceable player, and a great thing, 1% projection ownership. So there'll be like, a few idiots and me that basically are, or I guess I should say it the other way around, an idiot and a few other people that are playing Andy Dalton this week. So, wide receivers. Let's start with you, Nate Dogg. Where you can have any wide receiver on the board this week. Who are you looking at?
Oh, on the board. Oh man, I think I'm gonna say Amon-Ra, just for the matchup alone. I mean, 8,200. We saw last week that I think that it's more than capable. And don't get me wrong, I think that there's 3 or 4 pieces on that team. You're gonna have to choose one. I don't shockingly think it's going to be a running game from either one of these teams. Both teams haven't had to face the run, so it's one of those chicken and egg conversations. But yeah, I think Amon-Ra would probably be my anchor if I had to choose one. What about you guys?
He kills against the blitz, and this is an Arizona team that is blitzing at a really high rate. So you got a quarterback in golf's really good against the blitz, and we saw it last week with Tampa, right? That was why he's one of my favorite plays. Tampa, another team that blitzes a lot. And Sky was falling for St. Brown week 1, playing a team that blitzed a lot. All of a sudden, he's, their alpha receiver again. I expect that again. I love that. But the first guy that it's a toss-up between Nico and Devontae Smith. I'll probably end up going with Devontae in slightly more lineups because of his price. Now, he's going to be really high owned as well. I think his projected ownership was like in the 20% range. But it's just looking at what he does when A.J. Brown's not there, whether it be last week, 10 targets, 7 receptions, or you go back to his rookie year. So if you look at like the last 10 games with Hurts, without A.J. Brown, he's averaging over 10 targets, like right at 6.5 receptions, 80 yards. He scored 6 touchdowns in those 10 games. And I think they're going to be down. I think New Orleans is going to be able to continue to score. And we saw the Eagles' offense is not exactly electric without A.J. Brown. Nico Collins, to me, is the interesting one, and the most interesting game to me of the entire slate, because we can all agree Flores has just been doing a masterful job of really giving good offenses, some fits. Like what he did against San Francisco, Purdy was so impressed. He said to him after the game, like, what a great defensive plan that was. But the problem is Stroud has been incredible in his young career versus the blitz, and Nico Collins has been the guy that has feasted. I believe it was like last year, like 69% of Stroud's passing yards against the blitz went to Nico Collins. I just can't figure that Flores is not going to try to take Nico away, right? Like he's going to blitz, but they're going to still find a way to send multiple guys at Collins. And that makes me wonder, is it this like the Dell week? You know what I mean? Is this finally where Dell gets out? Because they run a lot of cover 3. And last year, Dell really feasted against cover 3 defense. Actually had the best numbers between him and Nico, even when they shared the field. So, I mean, how do you guys feel about like Collins and just that matchup in general?
I feel like I'm just right where you are, where I love Nico. I love him against those DBs. But I also think Brian Flores is one of the smartest defensive coordinators. So maybe he's going to steer stuff towards Nico. But at the same time, I think with what the receiving core they have now, where you've got Diggs, you've got Tank Dell, who is a guy I'd be looking for this week potentially too, because it feels like Diggs already had a big game, Nico's had a big game. I think Dell is right there with Diggs, honestly, for like the true wide receiver 2 in this offense. So I think he's due for a one.
Same target rate. I think it's like 18 and 19%.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, because what is the price difference between those two? I kind of like Dell, but yeah, I think Nico, like I said, I don't know if it was the other day or if it was last week. I think he's up there, potentially top 5 wide receiver in the NFL.
Dell's $1,400 really cheaper than Diggs. He's $5,200.
Wow.
Yeah, so I steer clear Diggs. I mean, like Diggs could have a big game, but for me, I would take Dell over Diggs every day of the week at those price points. But yeah, I really like the Nico play overall. So yeah, he's gonna be a hard guy to talk me out of any week because he was one of my favorite guys to target in drafts prior to the season. And until he joins that upper stratosphere in the 8,000s, most weeks I'm gonna at least be tempted.
Well, real quickly, because we got a question in here, and I'm not even going to try to butcher your name, Mr. Torian513. There, I did it anyway. He loves Dalton even naked. I actually am with him there. If you want to stack him, I do like him with Johnson. Trying to get more RBs I love. You got A-Chain, Gibbs, Mason. Again, I would look at those guys at the 6,000 range. Charbonnet, if he gets the workload, is not a bad option. Pollard is my favorite running back this week, though, just at 6,000. I think that's a great value against a Green Bay team that has struggled, obviously stopping the run. And again, it looks like Malik Willis is going to start. Joe, you want to talk about Godwin? Because I know that you kind of tipped your hand when you said that, you're playing Baker this week and stacking him with Godwin everywhere, but why don't you just go through, and I'll look up his ownership projection real quick while you do that.
Yeah, again, when you're facing the Denver Broncos, you're going to be a little bit wary about your wide receiver 1 because Patrick Surtain is legitimately just as good as it gets these days in the NFL. And then you're going to look, although he hasn't had the best start to this season, I will say. But the rest of this group is not anything that scares me. Again, they are bottom 5 in coverage grade so far this season on PFF. We've already seen Chris Godwin eat this season. I mean, literally this last week, I think I talked Keith out of taking Mike Evans out of the lineup in favor of Chris Godwin. And so my apologies, Keith, because I thought it was going to be another Mike Evans.
I wasn't going to bring it up, Joe, but since you did, thanks a lot, asshole.
But yeah, I mean, Godwin, he's got 15 of 16 targets, which again, if you put him back in the slot, he becomes an unstoppable force. So, I mean, obviously, is he going to continue to catch 90% of his targets? No. But if he gets 8 targets a game, I don't need him to catch 90% to be productive. He's at 200 yards on the season. He has a touchdown in both games. Again, I don't think, I'm hoping his ownership is going to be low because I know on the season, on the DK ranking,
that's disappointing. He's 15.8% is what I have. That would be like the 5th highest owned wide receiver this week, which is really disappointing. I thought the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a bummer. That maybe talks me out of playing Godwin in lineups where I'm not going with Baker. If I am going with Baker, though, I think he's the guy because like Evans will most likely have a tougher go of it. Godwin's going to be in the slot against lesser DBs. To me, yeah, and he's fully back to where he was before. I've always been a Godwin believer. So, yeah, now that he's back in his natural position, Baker and him have that chemistry. Yeah, this Bucs team, I'm just going to keep riding them until it stops.
Mm-hmm. Colby, you're not crazy about D Swift. We just talked about that. The Colts, I mean, their run defense. So, but I even said I don't hate running multiple Bears options this week because Herbert, again, had lost a lot of the snaps to Homer. He's now on IR for something with his finger. So the bad thing about this range is there's so many guys that I really like.
There were a lot of – can I ask you the ownership on a couple guys?
Well, that's what I say. They're all super owned. Ayuk's number 1 right now among wide receivers.
Okay,
Olave was the one that shocked me because I was like, breakout Olave game. Maybe people won't be on it. I think he's like the 3rd or 4th most highest owned wide receiver. Rashid is actually the one now because like I was going to pivot from Rashid, who I would pair with Carr like the last 2 weeks if I was going to do it, to Olave, thinking people wouldn't be on it. They are. So I do think it's still smart if you're going to play Carr to actually stack him with Rashid, especially in me. So like all those guys are just kind of super owned. DK Metcalf though is kind of down this week, and I mean, does that intrigue you at all? Go ahead, Joe. What were you going to say, buddy?
I was going to. What's the DJ Moore ownership?
Let's see here. Or do you have that right there, Nate?
I don't know the. I don't have the.
I get it right. I get it right here. Let me just.
I am intrigued with DJ Moore. You know, I think each week I've kind of just had the belief that Caleb's bound to improve,
right.
And I guess
he's ninth. So I guess people are pounding this range, the 6K range, because he's 12.7% is right now what he's at. But that's not insane. Don't get me wrong.
Like right. That's not like you have to bail.
Exactly.
Right. Like with Ayuk, I'm like, damn it. But it makes sense.
To me, if it's 15% or more, that's when it's like you got to feel really good about a player. For MME, again, not cash, just play the guys.
Right. Feel free to throw any of these guys if you like.
Yeah.
The cash games, because there's a lot of good matchups in this range, which is why everyone's all over them.
We didn't talk about Jefferson at all because I actually do like Naylor. We can talk about him in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys like Jefferson at all this week? His ownership projected 4.1%. It's 25th among wide receivers.
Well, I mean, the Derek Stingley matchup is always going to be a bit of a challenge, especially if that's their focus on defense. If Tamiko's basically saying, hey, we're going to shut out Justin Jefferson, which I think is every defensive coordinator's plan going in, and everybody's got a plan. And as Colby will back up, it's, you know, when the Vikings have negative 47 yards on offense as a whole, which is, I'm guessing, what he has set for the prop. Colby will probably let us know. I don't like the odds if negative 47 is the max, but in reality, I just would probably avoid that singular matchup. And Stingley's had, I would say, decent success against, you know, like elite ones. I always hate choosing against Justin Jefferson because it feels like that's a bet you'll never win. But for the money, let's see,
sure.
Where was he at? He's 8,600. Yeah, I mean, I would rather have him over Tyreek Hill for $2,000 more. If that means anything.
I do like that his ownership is so. I mean, 25th is crazy. 4% like that. That was one that kind of shocked me because.
I'm sorry, Keith. Did you say the Devonta Smith ownership? Did I miss that?
Yeah, it was 20. Well, I don't know if I said it on this. I think it's like
huge,
21. It's over 20%.
Wow.
Hold on.
I just want to know how bad it was.
It's pretty rough. Because I mean, 21.2%.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it makes sense, but
yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. None of these are like people are idiots. It's like the problem here. The problem is not enough of us are idiots.
Actually, it's just usually you're pissed because you wanted to play them, and then you're going, well, damn, it's always right. You thought you were smart and, you know, being creative and like, yeah, this is the right play. And then, so two guys we obviously have already talked about a little bit, and they're both in sort of the same range in that like 9%. Williams is 9.8. He's 58. JSN is 9.4, and he's 5,400. I kind of like playing both of those guys in a lineup this week. It allowed me to spend up at running back. Hell, if I play Dalton at QB in that lineup, I'm sure I can get really creative with my flex, tight end, and wide receiver. Either of those guys you prefer more, or do you just like both plays?
I 100% like both plays because I can't lean one way or the other because it just seems like with Jameson, the targets don't seem to fall off. It wasn't a 1 week wonder. And we know that implied totals. What is that? 51 and a half somewhere, I'm sure, somewhere around there.
To me, like Laporta's played, both backs are healthy, St. Brown's healthy, and this dude's, I think, like second or third in the league in targets. He's second in receiving yards. Like,
and it's red zone look too.
Exactly. Like, he's going to be a focal point. It's why they cleared the wide receivers. Why I was really high on this summer. They basically got rid of all other wide receivers, which is a little dangerous if something happens to him or St. Brown. But they wanted to make sure that, look, like, we're playing this guy, and he's been worth it. I love that he's feasting with Laporta on the field and both backs being effective and just like everything. I think that sky's the limit for him this year. He's going to be much more expensive in a few weeks than what he is this week. He might be another one of those guys. This is the last time you can get him under 6K.
Yeah, I tried telling you all you should get him, but no one to listen.
So we talked a little about Dell and Shaheed. Any high ownership players you guys feel good about fading? Oh, I mean, like I said, Mason, unfortunately, as much as I love him, 39% ownership, I can't do it in him. Now, Cash, again, play away, because to me,
Yeah. Lock
6,200, I mean, it's just such a good matchup. But there's no way I can do that.
Did you hear what Mason's DK rushing line was? Rushing only. Was like 94 yards.
Wow.
I mean, that, and I know that's not everything, but that's everything. That
It
says
is.
a lot.
That's
if
some
they're
of the
setting the
smartest
line,
people in the like
it's crazy number. At least that's what I had heard. I can't validate and verify that I saw it specifically. I heard it on the way home, and I thought, I gotta tell Joe and Keith that when I get in here. So hopefully we'll talk about Jordan Mason. And so luckily we did. So I don't have that knowledge just eating away at my brain.
What about my boy Ladd? I don't see, do you, Porter covering him predominantly? To me, that would not make the most sense. I mean, he is, I love this. When their ownership is unavailable, that usually means it is moving hard one direction or the other. But I just look at kind of a similar matchup to week 1, right? They played the Raiders, really good pass rush, elite pass rusher. And he was very, heavily involved. 7 targets, 5 catches, had the touchdown. I think we can see a similar deal this week. And again, the thing with the Chargers and the Steelers, and it's why I think that you're going to see more passing from both teams than we have most weeks. I don't think either team's going to be able to kind of run away with this game. And the Steelers they've controlled week 1 versus Falcons. They obviously controlled last week versus the Broncos. Same deal for the Chargers, who, controlled most of the Raiders game and obviously controlled all the game last week. I think Ladd's interesting. If you don't, again, if it's Quentin Johnston and, Ladd is going to be covered by Porter, I don't mind playing him. Both of those guys, a lot of short passes like that. I think Johnston's already had 5 first read targets, which is one of the higher first read targets for wide receivers, especially in this range. And it's because they're not asking him to do anything anymore. They're treating him like, Debo, or it's a screen or a quick out. It's just like, you're a big, strong, athletic guy. Go get it afterwards. But if Porter's on him all the time, I still don't want to mess with that because he's also a good tackler. Do any of those Chargers intrigue you, or is Pickens the guy in this range that intrigues you? Because I didn't realize he's had 124 yards and a touchdown negated from penalties. He has been top 7 and route win rate both of the first 2 weeks. And again, I think Steelers got to throw a little bit more, and he's got such a huge portion of the target share. And I mean, he's just a stud too. Actually, I'm talking myself because I think he's in that range too. Let me see what his ownership is. Because what is Pickens? 5,200? Is that right? Or is he a little higher?
57.
57.
Yeah, 57.
Let me see what his ownership is. Which of those guys do you like, or do you not like any of them? You're like, let's go to a game that maybe there'll be a little bit more throwing, which is a fair point. Pickens 2.5%. That's 28th among wide receivers.
I mean, I'm worried that game is like a 2.5-hour game because both teams are just running the ball the entire freaking time.
Yeah.
So it'd be hard for me to I like that as like something to keep in mind. That's great information. I just don't know if this is the week where I'm trying to cash in on it.
He also was covered by AJ Terrell and Patrick Surtain for 80, like 4%
that would
of his
make a
snaps
difference, I
week.
guess.
So I just want to say, he is kind of a stud. All right, what about Josh Downs then? Making his first start of the year. Right now, it's looking at 0.3%, 57th most owned wide receiver. I think they need him because they've been really struggling. With kind of the underneath short stuff. He's so good after the catch. He's going to play slot. He was 7th as a rookie in receiving yards from slot among wide receivers last year. I can't believe they wouldn't immediately slot him back into that role. He kind of intrigues me. The problem is that's another game that, I guess the Bears, like we said, this is the best chance they're going to have to get right early in the season. Or again, would you rather go down a little further where we got guys that we know get high target volumes? You got Reynolds for Denver. You got Robinson. for the Giants. And then Jalen Naylor is the guy that I keep circling, who has done a lot with a little. And it looks like that he is going to be the number 2 wide receiver again this week. And I do think Houston's going to be able to score on Minnesota and force them to pass. Any of those guys in that range, or any of those guys you're kind of looking at.
What if we go down to around the $4,200 range? Where
I know where you're going, and I love it.
Jordan Whittington.
You guys are, yep. I was going to say him or Dunze. I actually like both of them. Whittington's going to be the high volume guy. Dunze is the guy if you think that the Bears really break out. I like stacking. Well, why don't you talk about Whittington a little bit next? I know you talked about him a lot this summer.
Yeah, I didn't think that there was going to be an opportunity this fast. That's a shame that it's progressed to where it's at. But I think immediately, absolutely, he filled in right into the slot, a position that with this offensive line, and the offensive line is, that's the one thing about the Rams that many of us, I don't know if many of us are not talking about. I think everybody knows, but it's so beat up that it's not as impactful as losing Kupp and Nakua, but it's right up there.
A healthy line and one of those receivers gone, right? Like, wouldn't you feel like this offense could still be elite with a healthy offensive line and just one or two Kupp? Yeah.
But this would be short. I've seen people talk about it, 10 targets. Is that a possibility? Sure. I think at 4,200, if you can get 6 to 8 targets realistically in this offense and against the 49ers team that, they have their backs against the wall a little bit too. I don't think it's going to be a complete shutdown by San Francisco's defense, but I think San Francisco can still, even with a lack of weapons against the Rams defense is so bad, I think they're going to be able to move the ball instead of just plotting each. I don't think it's going to be Jordan Mason 3 yards. Jordan Mason 2.5. You know what I mean? Like, I think there'll still be somewhat explosive to keep the Rams needing to push the ball downfield as much as they possibly can. So it's more of a PPR play than anything else. But 4,200.
His ownership is unavailable right now, which again, in my experience, that usually means they think it. I don't know how they do this stuff, but it's usually shifts one way or the other, and that's why they don't want to have it listed. It will be up there eventually. Yeah. Michael Wilson. Again, if you think the Detroit-Arizona game is going to be a shootout, I'm still a Dortch believer. I think that the difference between week 1 and week 2 was the game script. Arizona got up big. They only threw it 5 times in like the last 26 minutes of the game. I think if they get in a throw situation, Dortch is still the guy that's going to benefit from it. But Juwan Jennings at 4,100 to me is really interesting because you got to assume that now with Kittle doubtful, which just makes me want to punch a hole in the wall. They're going to be all over Ayuk in the passing game. And that's going to leave opportunities for other Niners receivers. And Shanahan's still one of the best schemers on the planet. They just gave Jennings some money. He is somebody who, remember, had a huge Super Bowl where he both caught and threw a touchdown. I do kind of like Jennings at 4,100 this week. My only concern is Purdy has not been great early. They're having obviously issues with CMC and everything being out. But what about Ayuk? Let's talk about both Jennings and Ayuk because I want to know. Ayuk is fairly high on 2.
Right.
But do you think at his price point and with Kittle looking like he's going to miss and definitely Debo out, you still just have to go with him because – God, he could see 10 to 12 targets. And this is somebody who has always the biggest issue been his volume. Like he does as much with little in the term of targets as any, wide receiver 1/2 in the NFL and fantasy.
The Rams' explosive play rate allowed, according to FTN this year, has been over 15% in the passing game. That's about double the league average. So they've been easily the worst team in allowing big plays in the passing game. So I'm going to be tempted to throw somebody from the Niners passing game into these lineups. And if the ownership is going to be insane for Ayuk, then Juwan Jennings 4,100. That's not costing me a lot if I miss. And if they give up a huge play, especially if it's a huge touchdown play, then he's already paid for after one play. So I'm definitely looking at Jennings. And then just to go back to your Cardinals stuff real quick.
Yeah.
I forgot for our Wednesday pod to be looking at the man zone splits, because the Lions over the last season through this season are 4th in the NFL in running man. Greg Dortch, much better against man. Michael Wilson, much worse. So last year, Dortch under a yard per route run against zone defense, over 2 yards per route run against man defense, according to PFF. Michael Wilson last year, this is through week 17. I couldn't find the week 18 numbers because they posted these weekly. Michael Wilson, 68 routes run last season through the first 17 weeks. 4 yards total against man defense. This season, 9 routes run against man so far, 0 receiving yards. Marvin Harrison, 10 routes run, 0 receiving yards. Greg Dortch, the only guy with a reception against man defense, according to PFF, among the receivers. So obviously Trey McBride and the running backs are taking up the slack there. But yeah, but then of course Dortch apparently tweaked his hamstring today in practice.
He did, yeah.
It's now questionable for the game. Because otherwise I'm putting him in every freaking lineup I have. And now it's like, it's a hamstring, and that's scary. And I don't think I'll probably do it in like one lineup just because. But yeah, that's
who's on their depth
so
chart? Because Jones is not healthy, right? He's still out. Zay Jones.
Shit, I didn't even remember Zay Jones was on.
That's where he's at, right? Or do I have that wrong? Because it wouldn't be the first time.
I'm finding their depth chart right now.
I'm pretty sure that's where he went.
Oh, it says he's suspended.
Oh, well, that's even worse. He's definitely not going to play then.
Chris Moore, Zach Pascal, and Xavier Weaver are the second team guys there.
That's gross.
So I guess if you get an update Sunday morning that says Dortch isn't playing and here's the guy who's starting in his stead, maybe that's the play. But again, this is also a team that ran a lot of 12 personnel last week, so maybe if he's not good to go, we're just seeing a lot more heavy personnel for the Cardinals in this game.
All right. Let's go some deep cuts, and then we'll move on to tight ends. You got any guys that we're just throwing shit at the wall right now?
I'm digging.
I mean, again, Jalen McMillan, 3,700. I assume his ownership is going to be like 0 because Denver's number 1 on here against the pass.
Let me look it up, my friend.
I don't think that's a real number. Khalif Raymond is 36. Again, Detroit Cardinals. Just throw anyone in there. You got a chance.
I'll tell you, Charlene. I've got Puka and T. Higgins in the 16-team league I'm in. So I feel you. It's been a rough start. Full point PPR. So obviously those are some of my first selections.
I feel like this could be a big T week. I think
his ownership is unavailable, buddy. Jacob McMillan. What about Devon Vele? 3,400 for Denver. Good God, did he have a bunch of targets week 1? He missed week 2. He's back. I mean, let me see what his ownership is. I mean, what did he have? Like 9 targets, I think, week 1? Something insane.
Something like that. It was enough that he was on a lot of waiver conversations, and
he only had 38 yards, if I remember. But I mean, again, PPR, somebody that's this cheap. We'll take it all day. He's another one that's unavailable. So maybe unavailable just means it's very, very low.
Very low. I mean, Chris Conley, if you want to really throw a dart for the Niners. Because he can now be in those 3 wide sets. So
we saw Tim Patrick catch his first pass in about 2.5 years. Not that hype, but again, if you want a piece of that point total,
you'll feel good all around if he comes through.
Exactly.
God, feel good for that guy no matter what if he does something.
See, that's what we're here for. We're here to.
What about Britton Kobe? I think is his name. 3,200 for Philly. Saw 6 targets last week. Again, if everybody Devontae Smith's getting super owned, Philly's got to throw it somewhere. Again, I don't hate him. If he gets 9-10 points, you're good. And then the other one, Jacob Cohen. John Lynch has hinted he might get some opportunities. $3,000. I mean, he's the kind of player, right, Joe, that Shanahan could scheme up one play. He has a 70-yard touchdown, and, we'll take it and move on at 3,000. He's literally 3,000.
I have a lot of experience watching Jacob Cohen because he is an Arizona Wildcat. And I can tell you, we freaking miss him. Because as much as Tedero McMillan is awesome, when you have one awesome wide receiver, you could shade everything over to him. I mean, last year, Calvin had 13 touchdown receptions. He was playing with one of the best receivers in the country, and he led the team in touchdown receptions. So if he gets an opportunity, man, I'm hoping he takes it. I think he will. So, shit, I'm going to throw him in some lineups just because I have to. If he scores a touchdown and he's not in my lineups, I'm going to be too upset. So,
makes sense.
All right, we're going to move on to the tight ends. Before we do, and I'm sorry, I am a stoner, full discretion. We're only 2 people. Look at this. Are you okay, Keith, the drug scene, dude? Impacting your fantasy picks. Mike, I just said I'm a little bit of a stoner. What can I say, man? We're throwing darts here, man. It's MME. We're 2 people away from 1,200 subs on YouTube. It's been an amazing, basically, year where we went from, I think, having 4 YouTube subscribers. One of them was my mom and another was my wife. To where, again, we are 2 away from 1,200. We need you right now. There's 237. We just need 2 of you. Go over to the Fantasy and Frames YouTube page. Please hit subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. A lot of really smart people. I know Mike is worried because I'm doing meth and it's bad. Okay. But there's a lot of really smart people here and they're not on meth. So
that's good.
The tight ends this week, I am still so upset about George Kittle having the questionable tag thrown on yesterday and then doubtful. I'd done research of all the games Debo missed, and he had just feasted over the last 3 years. Done, Mike. I appreciate you subbing. I will seek help as soon as we get done with this show. So I can't do Kittle. My boy Bowers, that's where everybody wants to go. I'm pretty sure, though, if I remember, his ownership is a lot. Let me double check that before. But Bowers, again, what's been most impressive about him, he is not seeing. Oh, his is actually unavailable as well. I'll check back in just a second. But a lot of people are saying this is the Devontae week, or excuse me, the Devontae Adams, breakout week, even after what he did last week, because of how high of a rate of cover 3 that the Panthers run. And, that's usually over the middle of the field where you can feast, and Adams has done that. But I did go back and look at Brock's, 15 receptions. It was like 8 of them were right in the dead center of the field. So I think they both actually can have good weeks. Without knowing Bowers' ownership, obviously cash, he's going to be probably in a majority of my lineups just because I can't play Kittle anymore. But the tight end, there's some guys returning. We got Ferguson in Dallas. Do you guys like Ferguson this week? He's relatively cheap. Last year was basically the second most targeted pass catcher in that offense. Where are you kind of guys at tight end this position?
I mean, I'm definitely with you all in on let's just power slam putting Brock Bowers into our lineups. But yeah, if you're trying to find someone else, I think Ferguson's a reasonable spot. Again, that Baltimore defense has not been great against tight ends. I had some more. Obviously, you played Kansas City week 1, but I don't think Kelsey even did that much in that game. But I think Ferguson, he's shown some ability in the past. Outside of CD being a lock to get 12.
I don't know if Dr. Barry is a real doctor or not, Joe, but he does not think he's going to play. I thought he did a full practice today, I read, right? Or no? I don't think he has a questionable tag anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say Ferguson does not have a tag.
Okay. I mean, but, Dr. Barry may have some insider information, so be prepared to pivot. Where else? The tight end is another position that has just been gross. With the exception. Freiermuth, if he got more volume, I would love it. Same thing for Schultz. They have great matchups, but they are just not getting enough passes. The guy I keep circling is Jonnu Smith, 3,400.
Yeah, that's the low guy.
2.8% projected ownership. He had, after I think seeing 2 targets week 1, he saw 7 last week. And then the Dolphins OC came out and said they have to do a better job of getting him the ball more because he's so good after the catch, which is true. Unfortunately, I saw a lot of Jonnu Smith targets, receptions, etc. in Atlanta last year. So, right. But I do think that Jonnu is a great play because, again, quarterback that I don't think he's going to be chucking it. Should mean a lot of running backs and, tight ends, dump offs, etc. I know they'll have some design plays for Tyreek. Joe, are you happy or sad about kind of reminding Dr. Barry of a grown-up Harry Potter? It's one of my favorite series ever. I would take it as a compliment, but I don't know how you feel about being a wizard. You're a wizard, Joe Matz.
I mean, I'm a Hufflepuff, but despite Harry Potter being a Gryffindor, I will take that as a compliment.
I love it.
But also, yeah, just to throw in again, Miami's playing Seattle. You've got Drake one, you got Witherspoon on the outside. The strength of that defense is the corners. So yeah, if there's hope for that passing game, I think it's gonna be Jonnu Smith.
Any tight ends tickle your fancy there, Nate? I know it's pretty good.
Man, it's so bad. I mean, he's not cheap. He's in that same area. I think that Goddard could be an interesting play. He just didn't see enough action. I mean, granted, towards the end when they were, backs against the wall, that's who Jalen Hurts looked to, which doesn't imply anything against this matchup and against New Orleans when I don't know if the same scenario is going to hold true, but you're right. There's a lot of late names that if we're looking for the proverbial 4 for 46 and a touchdown, which would immediately put you as the tight end, probably 2 or 3 on the week.
I was going to say Goddard's averaging 7 points. You know what? That puts him on the main site for average points per game. 7. Oh my God. It's so sick.
It's gross. I mean, here's some names at the if you really had to get just ugly, and I think you talked about him last week, even as Jordan Akins from Cleveland. It's not great. I don't trust. He didn't even play as many snaps as he did in week 1 when there was a healthy David Njoku. We've seen the Bears play 2 tight ends quite often with Gerald Everett seeing a lot more, but again, you're looking at a target share that's so low. It's like, I want the person whom, will play a lot, which we circle Cade Otton when that comes, Captain Cardio Cade. And if he had more than just 1 target, I would be thrilled, but I don't. I think I just want Bowers in about every league, and I know it's going to be gross and it's going to ownership wise, and that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I think it's top heavy at tight end this week, or hoping that everybody else is pivoting away from the top 3 and ownership is all funneled through Freiermuth, Ferguson, Goddard, Andrews likely, and whomever. I would say Colby Parkinson, but after last week, I think people are even scared because that was a smash matchup.
Oh, that's what. Yeah, no, it was. We were unfortunately way too invested in Colby Parkinson. Likely being 0.7% projected ownership. That's 21st among tight ends. To me is real interesting because, again, thought the Ravens offense looked so much better week 1 than it did week 2, and he was heavily obviously involved. He didn't see his first target till midway through the second quarter, and his last 2, I'm pretty sure, didn't come until the final drive, where at that point they were trying to come back to win. So I said it this summer, and I mean, I don't take, joy in this, but I just think Mark Andrews is kind of washed. He's not the player that he was. He's a fine tight end, but I mean, you put him compared to Isaiah Likely out there, to me, Likely should be getting more snaps than Andrews does. We'll see. I mean, the Ravens are 0-2. It's, they got to get something going because 4 out of the 21 teams since we went to the 17-game schedule have made the playoffs after starting 0-2. Or excuse me, only 3 teams have made the playoffs. 4 teams have had a winning record. So it is looks like Florida's been on a few pounds. So we've got the meth head, Harry Potter, and Brett Favre.
Hey,
There we go. What a lineup.
At
least I'm the athlete of the group.
That is scary. Hey, man, did you see
Harry Potter is a championship Quidditch player.
I was going to say, I kind of take offense to that. Harry was definitely a Quidditch star. All right, let's do defenses, and then we'll get out of here. I hate doing this because my rule in cash or MME is like 98% of the time I'm going to go straight down to the bottom and then immediately take one of the 4 or 5 cheapest defenses. But man, they're kind of young this week, like the tight ends. No, we know you are, Chris. We like to have a good time. We just appreciate you watching, supporting us. Not a problem. Nobody took offense, I can promise you. Well, actually, I say that. I don't know if Nate took offense, but he'll get over it. He's a Cardinals fan and a Chiefs fan. Screw him.
Exactly. That's pretty good.
I love the Bucks, man. 3K versus Denver. Like, I feel like it's not a high enough price. I mean, you're only talking 700 more than the cheapest defense you can play this week. Denver has had an awful time moving the ball, and Joe talks about it all the time. Todd Bowles is still up there as one of the best, defensive masterminds in the NFL, and Bo Nix really struggled. Charlene says, screw it, I'm going with Arizona. Hey, you know what? All it takes is a defensive touchdown, and it's going to be a top 5, top 6 defense almost assuredly. So shoot your shot, Charlene.
That makes me think of the Austin Powers when he says, I too like to live dangerously, and he says, like, hit on 20. That's what I think of, is hit on 20. And maybe the ace pops up and you hit 21, but you never know. I
think it's more like a gut shot straight draw on the river, calling you all in for gut, because at least you have a few outs. Like, with 20 you got one. Again, because of the defensive touchdowns and stuff. I mean, or even a punt return, which that's the one thing I always forget. Like week 1 with the Bears, I'm going, how'd they score? Oh, yeah, they had a kick and a punt return or a block.
Actually, not to be corrected, but a gut shot has the same odds as hitting a 21 on 20, because you only have one card, which is an ace. There's 4 of which in a deck. And if you have a gut shot where you need a 5 to complete the straight, there's only 4 of the 5s as well. So technically it's the same odds, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Damn it, I think he is right. But
sorry.
Actually, I think there may be more odds in blackjack. I don't know how many decks.
Single deck blackjack. Single deck blackjack. That's all we're playing.
We're using 2 or 3 decks, but that's okay. But we've been going an hour and a half. I'm a little punch drunk by this time.
It's the math.
It is. I mean, it's actually the Chiba, but that's okay. I mean, what defense? I know, obviously, again, it's not hard to sell people on any defense versus Bo Nix right now. Is that offense looks really rough. They're the opposite of Anthony Richardson and the Colts. They just refuse to throw the ball more than 3 yards, to where the Colts refuse to throw any pass under 20 yards. Is there any other defense? The Vikings, to me, are intriguing. I know the Texans, like I said, I think Stroud's so good. They're going to figure out they're going to be fine, but the Vikings defense has looked amazing. And, we talked about Brian Flores, 2 totally different game plans too, that they ran week 1 to week 2. So, he's coming up with something to try to confuse the Texans. The question is, will they be able to adjust?
If you don't mind me going first, Joe.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I am 100% on the Tennessee Titans, 2,700. A home against Green Bay. If it's Malik Willis, I know it might be a revenge game, but you have a Tennessee front line that Tavondre Sweat has been a beast, monster of a man. And if there's Green Bay is going to do one thing well, and that's going to be try to run this matchup, and you have a L'Jarius Sneed on the outside who's more than capable of picking off one of Malik Willis's pass, returning it for a touchdown. We saw that in Kansas City multiple times. I just think that Tennessee's probably a little underrated in this matchup, and against a Green Bay, I don't expect to see either team score more than 20. So I'm at 2,700. That's my first input for my lineups has been each time, is starting with Tennessee and building around there.
Well, it's fair when you think that I doubt Green Bay is going to be able to duplicate 52 rush attempts to 14 pass attempts. That's going to be really difficult. That's actually my cash game play from my DFS playbook article that's coming out from this game is or excuse me, the MME play was the Titans D. The cash play obviously is Tony Pollard. I told y'all was my favorite back this week at 6K. Joe, any other defenses that you're kind of looking at?
The Bears at 2,600 against Indianapolis. Again, Indy is clearly a very high variance offense. They could put up 30 in this game. Anthony Richardson could be totally off, and this could be a disaster. The Bears, again, since they made that Montez Sweat trade last season, found some pass rush. Dating back to last year, they have 8 straight games where they have not given up more than 20 points.
Wow.
And last week, Texans just got bogged down, had to kick field goal after field goal. I appreciate it as a Kaimi Fairbairn owner in every league I'm in this year.
Yes, sir.
But, yeah, you face the Texans offense, you don't give up 20 points. They only gave up 310 yards. They have 3 sacks in both games they played this season. So, yeah, and again, you had the punt block for a touchdown, so the special teams can potentially be dangerous as well. So, yeah, if I'm going super cheap, and obviously, yeah, I'm with you. If I have that extra couple $100, I'm going to get the Bucks. But, yeah, if I have to go cheap, the Bears is where I'm ready.
You guys both hate the Vikings play? That's 2,400. Is that too much for you? I mean, they 17.5 points per game average right now. I mean, they scored 13 versus San Francisco. I know that obviously San Francisco lost Debo, but that was relatively late. Was not, they didn't have CMC, but it's kind of shocking. It shows what they think of your Giants offense, Joe, that they were 3,600 week 1 versus the Giants, dropped 1,200 for at San Francisco, had another good performance.
Yeah.
And they're, again, 2,400 versus Houston. So how dare they?
I mean, yeah, if you're going all the way down there, I mean, unless you're just like, I think Gardner Minshew craps the bed this week. Otherwise,
that was going to be the other question.
That's the only other play.
Right? If that game was in Carolina?
Yeah, then maybe, well, of course, there you just have 4,000 people with bags on their heads watching the game. But, yeah, I mean, Rams-Cardinals, I will find a way to get an extra $100 to not play the Rams and the Cardinals.
Even with San Francisco, with all the issues, you think they'll still be able to run the ball and move the ball for sure?
Yeah, I mean, if this was a reasonable defense, I'd be like,
if they had Aaron Donald?
If they had Aaron Donald, then it'd be like, we've seen Purdy struggle without some of these guys. Maybe this is a play. Against the team that's giving up the most, big plays in the passing game of any defense through 2 weeks and does not have Aaron Donald. No, I'll find a way to get $2,400 at least.
And I do agree with the expensive ones. I don't remember if it was Chris talking about the Raiders. I think they're a good play, but I would rather pay $700 down and take Tampa if I'm going to spend $3K or above, just because again, Dalton is a professional. Like kind of look at like Jacoby Brissett, some of those other. It's going to be better than Bryce. I mean, it shocked me.
I mean, if it's not, God
2 days ago, or right about the pass blocking, statistics, because you just assumed, right, that I'm sure Bryce had something to do it, but no way they're a top 5 pass blocking offensive line through 2 weeks, and yet there they are. They're 5th, and it makes a lot more sense why they're like, look, I know you're the number 1 pick last year, but we got to do something because this is just a mess, and the line is actually doing a decent job. So before we get out of here, Nate, this is the Keith Nate week, because Sunday night, Chiefs Falcons. Let me get your prediction for the game, and then I'll give you mine.
Okay. The Chiefs will not lean on the run with Carson Steele. Mahomes. Man. So here's a little nugget. Patrick Mahomes, as good as Mahomes has been, and this is off the cuff, so don't shoot me if I'm off by, a yard or two. But he's 10-0 in dome games. He's averaging 323 yards, I think it is, passing, 2.5 touchdowns per, and I think 0.25 interceptions in those matchups. Travis Kelce is 11-0 in dome games. He's averaging 120-something yards receiving. Seems like a really good get-right game for Kelce, considering the running game is going to be what it is. I think about a 20 to 25% increase in pass over rush ratio. I think Rashee Rice is going to do well. And this is all fantasy talk, of course, right now, but in real talk
Which running
as well.
back would you rather have if you're going to? I know you're saying you don't.
That's a good question.
Right now, Carson Steele.
Okay.
Going forward, I think it's going to be a mess and I didn't want to spend any money on any of them. I really didn't. Not Kareem Hunt, not Carson Steele. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I think that many people, we've been wrong about the Chiefs running game for 3 years in a row now, as far as what we expected. And this year was the first time we got it right with Pacheco, and then he breaks his fibula. So I don't love any consistent guaranteed, but I think what's going to happen, I do think that we struggle against Kyle Pitts. I think Pitts will.
We got to throw it to him. That's the issue.
I know. But Trent McDuffie and Drake London's going to be a great matchup. McDuffie's just been fantastic. I think it's a Bijan Pitts versus Kelsey and Rashee Rice with Mahomes and improved 28-24. I'll give the Falcons a closer game. I will say the one thing that intrigues me is with no Nate Landman for the Falcons, who has been, I know he hasn't played 100% of snaps. He's been a rotational piece, but he's been so pivotal in that run D that I wouldn't be shocked to see KC try to run. But Atlanta's run defense, Grady Jarrett's been huge for that front four. I think he's been fantastic.
One of the most underrated guys in the league for years.
Oh, for sure. And then Matthew Judon will be a difficult task, I think. But maybe 21-28. I think the Chiefs win. I think it's less than. It's not a 10-point blowout or anything like that. I think it's less than a touchdown. You?
I'm gonna say you guys win say 28-17. I still have real concerns about this offense. We'll see. He looked better, and Cousins definitely was a different QB from the point he hit Mooney for that long touchdown pass to the rest of the game. He just looked like he was moving a little quicker, was a little bit more confident and decisive in his decisions. Mm-hmm. But I do worry that if you get pass rush, which I tried to tell people this offseason, I wasn't completely sold this offensive line was as great as everybody was saying, because they're going, look at the pass blocking, rates from the last two seasons. Well, we had mobile quarterbacks and we weren't throwing a lot. There's a big difference between that and having a quarterback coming off an Achilles injury who's going to stand in the middle of the pocket. And we're 28th right now on the average time before there's pressure, on offensive plays, or passing plays. So I think you guys are going to, say 28-17. I'm just thankful we still have the Eagles game, because the Falcons schedule gets much easier after next week versus New Orleans. And, again, worst case will be 1-3, where I was really worried at the end of the season we could be 0-4 with Cousins coming back and just that murderous row kind of to start the season. Joe, you are impartial. You're going to make it 3 for 3 Chiefs, or you going upset?
27-16 Kansas City.
Yeah, I know you wouldn't go with me, you son of a bitch.
You didn't even go with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you and I had almost the same score.
I know. I'm the lone Falcon fan here.
No, you got the anti-jinx. You know what I mean? You just sometimes want to go ahead and just throw it out there. But Nate, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. People were so excited that you were here that we did get those 2 subs. Thank you so much for the people that did join. Jorge is celebrating like Roman Reigns somewhere right now in his house, throwing the ones up. So we missed Kevin obviously tonight, not feeling well.
Hope he feels better.
Read his article. He does such an amazing breakdown. Is it not great? It is available on his Twitter. That's K Tompkins. Oh my God, I want to get this right, because we screw this up on the waiver wire show each week. We screw this up, and I do not want to turn into Stacy. It is K Tom TOMPKINSII. Kevin, thank you very much, Jorge. Kevin is seriously just one of the best, man. I've really enjoyed. Didn't even know the guy before, I think like February of this year. We were on a few shows together. Now we're doing both the waiver wire, and he's doing this show with me and Joe each week. So we missed him this week, but I hope he gets feeling better. He said he was going heavy in his lineups. Do you still have that text, Joe? I know he was going Derek Carr with Kamara Barkley, Olave, Devontae Smith, and then I think it was what's the kid I mentioned? Devon Veal was one of the wide receivers. He was playing Brock Bowers, and then I couldn't remember what the defense and the other player was. But
looks like he had the Vikings defense.
There you go. What was the other wide receiver?
Well, let me see here.
You don't know how to read text, Joe. You're a smart guy, no, but
I'm trying to make sure I'm reading it right because I'm like, no, that text is from you. But did he detail?
Oh, that's fair. I send a million texts, so that's that's pretty fair.
It's a lot to wade through. All right.
I can't argue with that. So he is going with Jawan Jennings, Devon Veal. Is it Veal or Vele? Do you know how to say that, Nate?
If you say it with confidence, it's true. So
that's right.
Devon Vele.
Brock Bowers and the Bears D.
Bears. All right, there we go. Bears D. Let's go.
So Kev's got it going. But again, we appreciate all you guys for joining us. Be sure to check out Sunday morning the Fantasy and Frames. What do we call it? The Sunday morning show? I'm sorry, Nate.
Pregame. Yeah, just the fantasy pregame show.
Starts 9:00. I obviously am biased, but I think it is one of the best shows you can find on Sunday morning. It's way better than the stuff you'll find on TV. I can guarantee you that. That is popping. We had, I believe it was last week, we had around 2,000 people watching, which was kind of insane. Yeah. And the questions were coming fast and furious. We love that. That's one of our favorite parts. You have start-sit questions. You just want to talk about one of the matchups, whatever. Put it in the comment sections. We will get to it, but be sure to join that. And again, thank y'all so much for getting us to the 2,000 subs. It's kind of crazy how much we've grown in the last year, and the best is yet to come. So for my boy, Joe the Brain Mats, a.k.a. Harry Potter. And Nate Markham, a.k.a. Brett Favre. This has been the Daily Fix on Fantasy and Frames. We'll see you guys soon, and go Falcons.
Hey.